Hey, this is Pastor Tom. The passage we are studying this week is Psalm 33. If you looked at the life group notes you got on Sunday, you saw that the Digging Deeper exercise this week is for you to divide up Psalm 33 and see how the parts relate to each other. Since this is a basic part of what we do in these preview videos, my goal is to help you do this exercise. If you haven't already done so, I'd encourage you to pause this video and take some time to first see how you might divide up Psalm 33 and make a summary statement for each section. Use your life group notes, then come back to see what I see. A psalm, of course, is poetry. It weaves images and concepts throughout the song, but usually there's an image or concept that rises to the forefront as the song progresses. So when I'm trying to figure out how a psalm is put together, I look for words, images, and concepts that tie a section together. Here's what I notice about Psalm 33. The first 3 verses have 5 verbs of command, one right after another. It's easy to see how they relate to each other. It's about making joyful and thankful music to the Lord. I jot in some words that summarize this section. It's commands, praise. The following verses give the reason for praising. I circle that word for, but from here on, I need to figure out how this psalm progresses. As I read through the following verses, I see a lot of activity that the Lord does, things that He does for His creation and people. Everything from making the heavens and earth, to commanding and frustrating, to looking and delivering. But that covers verses 5 through 18, so I'm going to look for other clues that might divide up this section. I notice that verses 4 through 9 repeat the idea of the Lord speaking. Twice I see the word, and also breath of His mouth, spoke, and commanded. These verses also focus on God's creation of the heaven and the earth, so it makes sense to section off verses 4 through 9 as a section. I labeled this as the Lord's Word, or God the Creator. The next verses have the repetition of the words plan and counsel. So there's a change to God's present rule over His creation, and there's a switch from the created world to God's rule over its people. So I'll section out verses 10 through 12 and summarize it as the Lord's plan, or the Lord's in control of human history. In verses 13 through 19, the words look, sees, and I stand out to me as unique to this section. And the reason the psalmist does this is to point out how God delivers His people from death, something even the king or mighty warrior cannot do. I labeled these verses as the Lord's eye, or God sees and delivers His people. The final verses switch to the first person plural. Our, us, and we are used for the first time in this psalm. And for the first time, the psalmist asks for something, that the Lord's steadfast love be upon them. The verbs and nouns here express confidence, wait, glad, trust, hope are used. So I label this section as hope or prayer. The first 2 steps of our Digging Deeper exercise are done, but we still need to figure out how these sections relate to each other. I'll not do that with you right now. Instead, I want you to figure out what holds these 5 sections together. How do the middle 3 relate to each other and to the opening and closing sections? What would we be missing if one of those sections wasn't there? And when you get that done, you'll have an idea of how they relate. And then I want you to try to summarize the big idea of this psalm. What life-giving truth could you draw from this passage? Thanks for being with me. Please spend some time this week doing this Digging Deeper exercise that I've helped you start here. God's blessing on your week.